My name is Jenna, and I grew up in what looked like the perfect family from the outside. We lived in a massive house in the wealthy part of town, complete with a pool and a 3-car garage that my father's luxury vehicles called home. My dad built his company from the ground up, turning it into a successful enterprise that provided us with everything we could ever want. And my mother, Diana? Well, she made sure everyone knew just how successful we were. "Darling, I simply must have this new Gucci bag," I'd hear Mom say to Dad at least once a week. "Everyone at the country club has one, and I can't possibly show up with last season's model again." Dad would just smile, pull out his credit card, and hand it over without a word. That's how it always went, Mom asking, Dad giving. She didn't work a day in her life, but she sure knew how to spend money. Every month brought new designer clothes, spa treatments, and trips to exotic resorts where she'd post endless photos on social media. Meanwhile, I spent most of my time with a rotating cast of nannies. We went through them like Mom went through handbags. None of them ever seemed good enough for her. I remember one nanny in particular, Miss Sarah. She was different from the others. She actually cared about me, not just her paycheck. She'd help me with my homework, read me stories, and even taught me how to bake cookies. But like all the others, she didn't last long. I caught her wearing one of my silk scarves, Mom announced one day, though I knew for a fact that Miss Sarah would never do such a thing. "We simply can't have staff who don't know their place." I was 14 when everything changed. Dad had been working late more often than usual, trying to close a big deal. Mom was planning her next vacation to the Maldives, completely oblivious to the stress lines deepening on Dad's face. Then one night, the phone rang. I can still hear Mom's scream echoing through our marble hallways. Dad had collapsed at his office, a massive heart attack, they said. By the time the ambulance arrived, it was too late. Just like that, my father was gone, and our perfect world began to crumble. The funeral was a blur of black dresses and sympathetic murmurs. I stood there, numb, watching Mom put on a show for all the guests. She was the grieving widow, playing her part perfectly, but I could see the panic in her eyes. Not because she'd lost her husband, but because she was about to lose her lifestyle. The day Mom walked into Dad's office and sat in his chair, I knew we were doomed. She spun around in it a few times, straightened her designer blazer, and called all the department heads for a meeting. I watched from the doorway as she tried to channel her inner CEO, but all I saw was a desperate woman playing dress-up. "I've learned everything about this business from my husband," she announced to the room full of skeptical faces. "We're going to take this company to new heights." I wanted to scream. Dad hadn't taught her anything about business, she'd never shown any interest. The most involvement she'd had with the company was organizing the annual Christmas party. But now here she was, making grand proclamations about expansion plans and market strategies she clearly didn't understand. That night at dinner, she couldn't stop talking about her new role. "Did you know, Jenna, that your father had all these complicated spreadsheets? Well, I've simplified everything. Who needs all those numbers when you have instinct?" "Mom," I tried to reason with her, "maybe you should hire someone to help run things? Someone with experience?" She waved her hand dismissively. "Don't be silly, darling. I'm doing perfectly fine. You should hear how impressed everyone is with my natural business acumen." But they weren't impressed. Over the next few months, I watched as experienced employees started disappearing one by one. First went Dad's trusted CFO, then the operations manager, and soon even the junior staff were jumping ship. Meanwhile, I'd overhear whispered conversations about missed payments, canceled contracts, and mounting debts. Mom started taking money from the company accounts for her personal expenses, insisting she deserved it as the CEO. When I questioned her about it, she'd just pat my head and say, "You're too young to understand business, sweetie." Every family gathering became a stage for her delusions. "The company's never been better," she'd boast to our relatives. "I've modernized everything. James would be so proud." Dad would have been horrified. I was only 15, but even I could see we were heading for disaster. The final blow came just before my 16th birthday. The bankruptcy notice arrived on a Tuesday morning, right after Mom had ordered new office furniture for her expanding empire. We lost everything. The company was sold to pay the debts, but it wasn't enough. Our house went next. I watched as movers packed up our luxury furniture and Mom's designer wardrobe. We moved to a tiny house on the outskirts of town, the kind of place Mom used to drive past with her nose in the air. The only thing we had left was my college fund, money Dad had set aside in a protected trust that Mom couldn't touch. But that didn't stop her from trying. "Jenna, darling," she'd say, voice honey sweet, "you know we could use that money now. We can always figure out college later." "No, Mom. That's for my education." Her face would darken. "After everything I've done for you, this is how you repay me? By watching your mother struggle while you sit on a pile of money?" She'd give me the silent treatment for days after these conversations, but I stood my ground. I'd seen how quickly she could burn through money, and I wasn't about to let her destroy my future too. The next 2 years dragged by in tension and cold shoulders. Mom and I barely spoke except to argue about money. When my high school graduation finally came around, she made it clear she wouldn't celebrate my achievement. "Why should I throw you a graduation party?" she said the morning of the ceremony, not looking up from her coffee cup. "You won't even help your own mother when she needs it." I'd already been accepted to Barrett University, a good school 3 states away. Mom didn't know it yet, but I'd chosen it specifically for the distance. As soon as the graduation ceremony ended, I told her my plans. "You're abandoning me?" she gasped, clutching her chest dramatically. "After everything?" "I'm not abandoning you, Mom. I'm going to college, like Dad wanted." The dorm room at Barrett was tiny compared to my old bedroom, but it felt like paradise. No more guilt trips, no more silent treatments, no more walking on eggshells. I stretched my dad's money as far as it would go, cheap meals, used textbooks, no spring break trips. Every holiday, I'd make the obligatory phone call home. "Hi Mom, how are you?" "Oh, surviving, barely," she'd say with a sigh. "Unlike some people, I don't have a trust fund to live off of." She never called me first. Not once in 4 years. But I didn't care, I was too busy building my own life. I graduated with honors, landed a job at Thompson and Associates, and found a small apartment in the city. Work became my focus, and I was good at it. Really good. Within 2 years, I'd been promoted twice. Then came that phone call. It was Christmas, and I was doing my usual check-in. "The heating's broken again," Mom complained. "I can barely afford groceries, let alone repairs. But don't worry about me, I'll just wear 3 sweaters and eat crackers." Something in me shifted. Maybe it was because I'd just gotten another raise, or maybe I was just tired of the guilt. But I heard myself say, "I'll come visit next week." I flew home with a plan. The house looked worse than I remembered, peeling paint, broken gutters, ancient carpet. Mom opened the door wearing that martyred expression I knew so well. "I'm doing well at work," I told her over coffee. "I'd like to help. I can give you $1,000 a month, and we can fix up the house a bit." Her eyes lit up like I hadn't seen in years. Within weeks, the house had fresh paint, new carpets, and working heat. Our new routine started slowly. Mom would call with an invitation to dinner, her voice warm and enthusiastic. "Jenna, sweetie, I was thinking we could try that new Italian place on Mason Street. Nothing fancy, just a nice family dinner. I've invited Aunt Carol and Uncle Pete." These dinners became our thing. Mom would pick modest restaurants, places where the entrees didn't break $30 and the wine list fit on one page. Sometimes it was just us, other times she'd invite her sister Carol, or her old friend Martha, or Uncle Pete. The bill usually came to around $200, which I always picked up without hesitation. I still remember the first time Mom bragged about me at one of these dinners. We were at Luigi's, a cozy family-owned place with checkered tablecloths and candles stuck in Chianti bottles. "Did I tell you," Mom announced to Aunt Carol, beaming with pride, "that Jenna just landed the Anderson account?" The biggest client in her firm's history. My daughter's a real powerhouse in the business world. Takes after her father that way. It felt good. Different from the way she used to brag about me as a child, when I was just another accessory in her perfect life. This time, she was genuinely proud of what I'd accomplished on my own. The dinners became more frequent. Mom would call every couple of weeks, suggesting new places she'd heard about. Never anything extravagant, she seemed to understand the unspoken boundary there. She'd invite different combinations of relatives and friends, small groups who were always grateful and never presumptuous. Meanwhile, my career continued to flourish. I closed bigger deals, earned larger bonuses, and finally had enough saved for a down payment on my own place. The mortgage was substantial, but manageable with my salary. Mom came to my housewarming party, and for once, she didn't make any comments about the size or location. She just hugged me and said, "You've done so well, sweetie." When I upgraded to a new car, it felt natural to give Mom my old one. It was still in great condition, a 5-year-old Lexus that I'd maintained meticulously. Her ancient Honda was on its last legs anyway. The car was just the beginning. I noticed her ancient dial-up internet connection during one visit and immediately arranged for high-speed fiber installation. Then I started covering her utility bills when I realized she was keeping the house too cold in winter to save money. The real turning point came when I planned my first business trip to New York. Mom had always wanted to see Broadway, so I invited her along. Then Aunt Carol mentioned she'd never been to New York either, and before I knew it, I was booking tickets for 3. They were perfect travel companions, excited but not demanding. They were happy with comfortable mid-range hotels and authentic local diners. We walked everywhere instead of taking taxis, and they spent hours in Central Park, just people watching. That first trip set a precedent. Whenever I had to travel for work, Boston, Chicago, San Francisco, I'd bring Mom and 1 or 2 relatives along. They'd entertain themselves while I was in meetings, we'd meet for dinner, and on my free days, we'd explore together. They never asked for shopping sprees or expensive shows, though I'd occasionally surprise them with tickets to a musical or a nice dinner cruise. It felt like I was finally getting to know my real mother, the person she might have been if money hadn't warped her perspective so badly all those years ago. The phone call came on a Tuesday morning while I was reviewing contracts at work. Mom's voice had that special excitement I'd grown to recognize over the years. "Jenna, honey, I've been thinking about my birthday next month. You know I'm turning 55, right?" "Of course, Mom. I was planning to come down for it. Did you want to do something special?" "Oh, yes, I want to celebrate properly this time. It's a big milestone, after all." I immediately started planning. "How about a nice dinner at your place? We could invite the usual crowd, Aunt Carol, Uncle Pete, Martha. I could hire a caterer, or we could order from that Italian place you love." "Oh no, darling," she cut me off. "Don't worry about any of that. I want to arrange everything myself this time. You've done so much for me lately, let me handle my own birthday celebration." Something in her tone should have warned me, but I was just happy to see her taking initiative. "Are you sure?" "I really don't mind helping." "Absolutely positive. Just show up at 7. I'll text you the restaurant address." When the day came, I flew in early and checked into my usual hotel. Mom had texted me an address I didn't recognize, but I didn't think much of it until my taxi pulled up at Le Chateau, the most expensive restaurant in the city. The kind of place where the menu doesn't list prices, and you need reservations months in advance. The headwaiter led me through the main dining room, past the crystal chandeliers and gold-leafed walls, to a massive private section in the back. My heart stopped. There, spread across several tables draped in pristine white linen, sat at least 30 people, every relative we had, plus what looked like half of Mom's social circle. "Jenna." Mom rushed forward, tears gleaming in her eyes. She wrapped me in a tight hug that smelled of her favorite expensive perfume. "I'm so happy you're here." Stunned, I let myself be led to a seat. Aunt Carol reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "You're such a wonderful daughter," she gushed. "Your mother couldn't stop talking about how you insisted on throwing her this amazing party. The foie gras is divine, and I hear the Wagyu beef is coming up next." The room seemed to spin as realization hit me. Mom hadn't just arranged her own birthday party, she'd arranged an extravagant celebration that she expected me to pay for, without even telling me about it. My stomach churned as I watched plate after plate of obscenely expensive food arrive at the tables. Waiters glided between guests, pouring $500 bottles of wine like it was tap water. I spotted Japanese Wagyu beef that I knew cost $400 per serving, imported caviar, whole lobsters flown in from Maine. A quick mental calculation made me dizzy. $8,000, at least. Maybe more. Aunt Carol stood up, champagne flute in hand, gently tapping it with her silver spoon. The crystal ring echoed through the private dining room as conversations died down. "I'd like to make a toast," she announced, her face glowing. "To my wonderful niece, Jenna. Your generosity tonight shows just what an amazing daughter you are. The way you've taken care of your mother, and now this incredible celebration." "I'm sorry," I cut in, my voice shaking slightly. "But I need to stop you right there." The room fell silent. Mom's smile froze on her face. "I didn't arrange this dinner," I continued, looking around the room. "I didn't choose this restaurant. I didn't authorize any of these expenses. In fact, this is the first I'm hearing about any of it." Gasps rippled through the gathering. Someone's fork clattered against their plate. "Jenna," Mom hissed, her face reddening. "Don't be ridiculous. Of course you're paying for this. Who else would?" I stood up slowly, my chair scraping against the marble floor. "No, Mom, I'm not. I offered to host a nice dinner at your house or order from your favorite Italian place. You said you wanted to handle everything yourself. You never mentioned Le Chateau or inviting 30 people. But you always pay," she sputtered. "You've been paying for everything. For reasonable things, normal restaurants, basic bills. Not this." I gestured at the extravagant spread. "I don't owe you a blank check." "You ungrateful." Mom's voice cracked. "After everything I've done for you." "Everything you've done for me?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You mean like trying to spend my college fund? Or running Dad's company into the ground?" The silence in the room was deafening. I reached into my purse and pulled out my wallet, counting out $200. "This covers my pork chop and glass of wine," I said, placing the bills on the crisp white tablecloth. "Good luck with the rest." I walked out without looking back, my heels clicking against the marble floor like a countdown. Nobody called after me. Nobody tried to stop me. The night air hit my face like a slap as I emerged onto the street. I hailed the first taxi I saw and directed it to my hotel. As soon as I reached my room, I turned off my phone. I knew it would start ringing soon enough, angry calls from Mom, disappointed messages from relatives, demands for explanations. But for now, I just needed silence. I sat on the edge of the hotel bed, hands shaking, and watched the city lights twinkle through the window. For the first time in years, I felt truly alone, and strangely, wonderfully free. The next morning, my phone nearly exploded when I turned it on. The notifications kept coming, 47 missed calls from Mom, 28 from Aunt Carol, 15 from Uncle Pete, dozens more from various relatives. The voicemail was full. I took a deep breath and called Mom. She picked up on the first ring. "Mom, I'm sorry about how things went down last night," I started, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'm coming over now. We need to talk about what happened at the restaurant." I genuinely thought she might meet me halfway. That maybe, just maybe, she'd realize how inappropriate it was to arrange such an extravagant party on someone else's dime without even asking them. I couldn't have been more wrong. "How dare you?" Her shriek was so loud I had to hold the phone away from my ear. "You selfish, narcissistic, ungrateful thing. Do you have any idea what you've done?" Mom, if you just told me about. You completely humiliated me. In front of everyone. Do you know what happened after you stormed out like a spoiled brat? Everyone had to chip in $400 each to cover the bill. $400. The total came to $12,000, $12,000. And you, with all your money, couldn't even be bothered to pay for your own mother's birthday. You greedy bastard. My head spun. $12,000. They'd ordered even more after I'd left. You think I'm greedy, Mom? Fine. I'll show you greedy. I hung up mid-rant. My hands weren't shaking anymore. Instead, a cold clarity settled over me as I opened my laptop. First, I logged into my bank account and canceled the automatic monthly transfer of $1,000 to her account. Next, I called the car dealership where I'd purchased my old Lexus. Hi, this is Jenna Mitchell. I need to arrange for a vehicle retrieval. The car is still in my name. 20 minutes later, a tow truck was on its way to Mom's house. I pulled up the internet service provider's website. 3 clicks and her high-speed connection was scheduled for disconnection. Finally, I opened my social media account and started typing. Important announcement for my family members, effective immediately, I will no longer be financing any trips or travel expenses for my mother or relatives. Any previous arrangements are cancelled. Please make your own travel plans going forward. I hit post and closed my laptop. It felt like closing a chapter of my life. The fallout was nuclear. Within hours of my social media post, my notifications exploded with comments from relatives who, just days before, had been more than happy to enjoy my generosity. How could you do this to your own mother? Aunt Carol wrote. After everything she's sacrificed for you. You're nothing but a selfish, money-obsessed ingrate. Uncle Pete, who'd traveled with us to San Francisco just 2 months earlier, chimed in, your father would be ashamed of what you've become. Is this how he raised you? To abandon family? The comments kept coming, each one more venomous than the last. My cousin Rachel, who I'd helped move into her new apartment just last year, posted, don't bother showing up at my wedding in September. I don't want someone so heartless at my special day. Aunt Carol followed up with another blow, and you can forget about my 60th anniversary party next month. We don't need your money or your presents. It was fascinating, really, watching how quickly they forgot all the dinners, all the trips, all the times I'd picked up the check without a second thought. Now I was the villain in their story, the greedy daughter who'd cut off her poor mother. None of them mentioned the $12,000 dinner bill they'd been forced to split. None of them questioned why Mom had invited 30 people to a restaurant where entrees started at $300 without discussing it with the person she expected to pay. In their version of events, that part didn't matter. The first few weeks were the hardest. I threw myself into work, took on extra projects, anything to keep my mind occupied. My phone kept buzzing with messages from unknown numbers, relatives, trying to reach me through different phones after I'd blocked them. I changed my number. Some nights, I'd lie awake wondering if I'd done the right thing. But then I'd remember all the times Mom had manipulated me, all the guilt trips, all the endless demands, disguised as love. The birthday dinner wasn't an isolated incident, it was just the most blatant example of a pattern that had been there all along. 2 months after the restaurant incident, Mom tried to reach out. She used her neighbor's phone to leave a voicemail. Jenna, honey, can we talk? I miss you. Things have been difficult. Maybe we could meet for coffee? Just us? Her voice sounded smaller somehow, less certain. Part of me wanted to believe she'd changed, that she'd finally understood. But then I noticed she still hadn't apologized. There was no acknowledgement of what she'd done, no taking responsibility. Just another attempt to reel me back in. I blocked that number too. Life went on. I got another promotion at work. Without the constant drain of supporting Mom and various relatives, my salary stretched further than I'd ever imagined. I took a trip to Europe, alone this time, no relatives to entertain, no one's demands to accommodate. It was liberating. Sometimes, through mutual acquaintances or social media, I hear bits and pieces about Mom's life. She had to downsize again, move to an even smaller place. She complains to anyone who'll listen about her ungrateful daughter who abandoned her. The relatives all sympathize, of course, but interestingly, none of them have offered to support her the way I did. Do I miss having a mother? Sometimes. But I miss the mother I needed, not the one I had. I miss the idea of family, but not the reality of what my family had become, a network of users all too happy to take everything I could give and then condemn me when I finally said enough. Maybe someday Mom will have a real epiphany. Maybe she'll understand that love shouldn't come with a price tag, that family isn't about financial transactions. Maybe she'll offer a genuine apology, not the kind that comes with excuses or demands, but one that shows true understanding of the hurt she's caused. If that day comes, I might be open to rebuilding some kind of relationship. A different one, with clear boundaries and mutual respect. But even then, I'll never go back to being the family ATM. That chapter of my life is closed forever.